If you're running a manufacturing operation in Indiana, today's numbers go straight to your margins. Steel tariffs on most foreign imports have jumped to 50%. Electricity rates from Duke and NIPSCO are climbing in phases, and the RV sector in Elkhart is trying to recover while new tariffs hit both its materials and its customers in Canada. All of that stacks on top of the cost and workforce pressures you're already feeling. So, in the next few minutes, I'll walk you through what's changed, why this is a direct cost event for your facility, and the questions to put in front of your team so you're making decisions with current data. If your facility buys steel or aluminum and you pay Duke or NIPSCO for electricity, the jump to 50% tariffs plus double-digit electric rate increases is not abstract policy. It's a price reset on the inputs you use every single day. And as of June 2025, Section 232 tariffs on most foreign steel and aluminum imports doubled from 25% to 50%. Indiana exported about $53 billion of manufactured goods in 2023, with Canada around $14.7 billion and Mexico about $7.1 billion. Both of those partners are now under tariffs. The Richmond Fed has called out Indiana as one of the states carrying the heaviest tariff burden because of how concentrated we are in autos, fabricated metals, and machine shops. For steel product manufacturing from purchased steel, estimated tariff costs have been sitting about 60% since mid-2025, and that is a direct margin hit every time you buy coil, plate, or structural shapes. On the energy side, electricity is doing more damage than natural gas. Duke Energy, Indiana's IURC-approved increase is being rolled out over two stages, roughly 8% that hit in February 2025 and another 3% in early 2026. NIPSCO's 2025 electric rates are phasing in through early 2026 after regulators signed off on a $257 million annual revenue increase. That translated into residential bills going up more than 26% in 2025 alone, and commercial tariffs ride the same trend line, even if the exact percentages differ, and they do, typically higher. The strain has become political. In September 2025, Governor Mike Braun publicly confronted the state's 5 major investor-owned utilities and said, "We can't take it anymore," and directed the new ratepayer advocate to dig into profits and find cost savings. Well, that plays out. Your reality is pretty simple. Tariffs plus power rates are resetting your baseline cost structure. Natural gas costs are relatively calm. Electricity and materials are not. So watch what the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission actually does with that directive over the next 12 months, not just the press conference. But here's a question for your team around this. What is our current exposure to the 50% steel and aluminum tariffs, and how have we built Duke Energy and NIPSCO's phased rate increases into our 2026 and 2027 budgets by facility and product line? Have we considered that? Have we done anything? Hey, if you're looking at AI for predictive maintenance, quality, or process control, the hard part is not the software, it's whether you have the people who can keep it running. On the technology side, the value proposition is really strong. Predictive maintenance systems that use AI and machine learning are cutting unplanned downtime by an estimated 20 to 50% in facilities that deploy them well. Computer vision is taking over repetitive inspection tasks with higher accuracy, and generative tools are helping with design and prototyping. These systems directly protect uptime and quality in a world where your energy and material costs are already higher. The constraint is skills. Indiana's manufacturing sector employs around 1 in 5 Hoosiers and is projected to grow about 1.8% over the next decade. But the work is changing. A 2024 Deloitte and Manufacturing Institute study estimates that U.S. manufacturing will need about 3.8 million jobs filled over the next 10 years. And if workforce challenges go unsolved, roughly 1.9 million of those positions will sit open. About 65% of manufacturers in the latest NAM Outlook said attracting and retaining talent is their primary challenge, and that was before AI requirements fully filtered into job descriptions. Now, at the same time, Indiana has attracted nearly $15 billion in AI data center investments from AWS, Google, Meta, and Microsoft. The infrastructure side of AI is voting for this state. The workforce side is not keeping up yet. Purdue's Polytechnic Institute and Ivy Tech Community College are already building advanced manufacturing and industrial AI curricula, but they need manufacturers to show up and define what skills actually matter on your floor. reading AI-generated maintenance recommendations, interpreting anomaly alerts, recovering systems when a model goes sideways. Complicating all of this, Indiana's Manufacturing Readiness Grant Program, $56.9 million in grants to more than 500 companies, unlocking over $812 million in private capital, lost its dedicated state funding line in May 2025. That makes collaboration with schools and industry groups even more important. So watch how Purdue, Ivy Tech, Connexus Indiana, and the Indiana Manufacturers Association talk about AI workforce programs in the next year. That's where your future technicians and engineers will come from. So here's a question for your team. What specific AI-related skills will we need on our lines in the next 1 to 3 years? And which local campuses or training partners are we actively working with right now to build that pipeline instead of waiting until after the next implementation goes live? Hey, if you build for the RV supply chain in northern Indiana, the industry has climbed off the floor, but tariffs and input costs are adding new hazards just as things were starting to look better. Wholesale RV shipments bottomed in 2023 at about 313,174 units after a massive drop from more than 500,000 units at the pandemic peak. Since then, the curve has been upward. 2024 finished at 333,733 units, up 6.6%. 2025 came in at about 342,220 units, another 2.5% increase. RVIA's spring 2026 forecast pulls this year's shipments in a band between about 328,800 and 367,000 units, with a median around 349,000. That would be a third straight year of growth. Indiana's share of that pie has actually grown. The state now produces roughly 86% of all RVs manufactured in North America. That concentration is a strength when demand is healthy and a vulnerability when anything interferes with it. The new interference is tariffs. Gulfstream Coach has said publicly that Elkhart ships about $1.7 billion in RVs into Canada each year. Canada is now in the middle of the tariff environment, and that hits a key outlet for Elkhart, LaGrange, and surrounding counties. On the input side, the same 50% steel and aluminum tariffs we talked about earlier raise the cost of frames, chassis, and other heavy metal components. You can already see the stress in the workforce data. In May 2025, Heartland RV, Cruiser RV, and DRV, and all Thor Industries brands filed WARN notices covering just under 450 workers across plants in Elkhart, Middlebury, and Howe, including a related closure at the line in Sturgis, Michigan. The Thor-related layoff event crossed 550 workers. Governor Braun addressed it directly at the Elkhart RV Power Breakfast, reminding the industry that it has survived past cycles, but acknowledging the hit to local workers. Early 2026 shipment and registration data show single-month year-over-year declines in the low teens percentage rate, which is consistent with a recovery that's real but still quite sensitive. So watch trade policy developments that affect Canada in particular and track how major RV manufacturers talk about their production plans and any further layoffs in Elkhart County. So here's a question for your team. With tariffs now hitting both key export markets like Canada and our steel and aluminum imports, how are we adjusting our 2026 and 2027 sales forecasts and materials sourcing strategies so we're not planning as if the pre-tariff environment still exists? Today, you're facing a cost environment where steel and aluminum carried 50% tariffs. Duke and NIPSCO rate cases are resetting your electricity baseline. AI systems promise major uptime gains if you can staff them, and the RV sector in Elkhart is trying to extend a fragile recovery while tariffs and input costs push back. The tariff and electric rate story is no longer a side note. It's the main driver of your energy and material costs. The AI workforce gap means you cannot just buy technology and hope. And the RV numbers show how even a recovering sector can start shedding hundreds of jobs when trade policy and input costs change the math. So the bottom line today is Indiana manufacturers need a current line-by-line view of where tariffs, power rates, AI readiness, and sector-specific risks like RV demand are compressing margins, and a deliberate plan to respond, because operating off 2023 assumptions in 2026 is a recipe for being surprised by costs you could have absolutely seen coming. Now, obviously, I don't run your plant. you do that. But my real job as CEO of Tactical Energy Group is to stay on top of everything that changes the cost and reliability of your power and the economics of making things in Indiana so we can build the right products and programs to support the manufacturing community. But while I'm doing that work anyway, this brief is my way of giving you as much of that insight as I possibly can so you can spend more time running your operation and less time trying to decode your bills, understand rate cases, and interpret the headlines. So let me give you a few questions you can take straight into your morning huddle. If your team can answer these with numbers and not guesses, you are ahead of most operators in the state. First, given the 50% steel and aluminum tariffs and the approved rate increases from Duke Energy Indiana and NIPSCO, where are our largest combined cost exposures by product line, and what concrete actions can we take this quarter to reduce that pressure, whether that's redesign, renegotiation, or demand side management energy programs? Second, on the AI front, what specific systems are we planning to deploy in the next 1 to 3 years? Predictive maintenance, quality inspection, scheduling. And which skills do our current people lack to monitor, interpret, and troubleshoot those systems without outside help? Third, which local partners, Ivy Tech campuses, Purdue, Polytechnic, and others, are we actively talking to right now about apprenticeships or tailored training that match those AI skill needs instead of hoping to hire fully trained people off the street in a few years? Fourth, for any exposure we have to the RV sector or to export markets like Canada and Mexico, do we have an updated risk assessment that reflects current tariffs and shipment forecasts? And have we identified alternative customers or product mixes if that demand softens again? If this helped you see how tariffs, your electric rates, AI, and RV demand all connect to your own cost structure, then send it to another Indiana operator who's still planning off of last year's assumptions. The more informed our manufacturing community is, the better we can defend our margins together. I'm Daniel Burke. This is TEG Daily, Indiana Manufacturing News, and I will see you tomorrow.